everybody, it's Emily from Naptime Creations, and today I'm going to be turning some sweaters into some new clothes for my kids. So we're going to just get started in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and share this so a few people can see, and I'd love for you to say hi and let me know where you're watching from tonight. So I think it's a good time of year to make things with old sweaters. So my husband, before Christmas, went through his sweaters and he came up with 2 that he no longer wanted. So today we're going to make 3 things for my kids with those 2 adult sweaters. So obviously the larger the sweater that you have, the more you can make with it, and the larger the kid size you can make with it. If you're just working with a woman's sweater or a small men's sweater, it's pretty hard to make anything really large. But so either go to the thrift store and get something bigger, or if your husband wears bigger clothes, then perfect. You'll be able to going to be upcycling some of my husband's sweaters to make 3 things for my kids. So my plan is to make a tunic for my daughter, some like sweatpants, leggings, sweater leggings for my daughter, and a sweater for my son out of 2 sweaters for my husband. So this is actually one of his favorite sweaters, and I really liked it on him as well, but the neckline was starting to come apart here. Okay, so we can't use the neckline, but we can use the rest of it. So we're going to use this, and we're going to try to retain the original design. And then we're going to use this gray sweater, which is in fine condition. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It just is like kind of a heavier one, and it wasn't my husband's. Hopefully the outcome will be 3 things for my kids. Rose will be able to hopefully model the tunic and the pants, and then we'll go from there. So we're going to start with the pants because I feel like it's kind of the simplest garment. And I'm going to make her some pants from the large sleeves of this sweater. So if you've seen my, I have that 1-hour PJ tutorial where I shared how to make from a large women's shirt a top and bottom for kids. So it's going to be that same general idea where we're going to use the sleeves for the pants. And I'm going to I've traced my mesh pants pattern, and I'm using the back because we're just going to do it on the fold. So you could also use my legging pattern if you wanted it more fitted. I'm trying to make these a little bit looser and not super tight, but sweater leggings would also be a super cute way to do it too. So this is the mesh pants traced, and you can find that on my site. The mesh pants pattern is just kind of a straight-legged pattern. In fact, I recommended someone the other day, they were asking for PJ pants for their kids, and I said, you know, because I had made those PJ pants for myself, and I said just use the mesh pants pattern and redo the waistband a little bit different if you want, and it turned out perfectly. So anyway, that's the mesh pants pattern is very versatile, I think. So the one thing you want to be aware of when you're using a sleeve to create pants, you can generally keep the whole bottom part, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut a little bit out of here for a little bit of shaping, but you can only go as big as your sleeve is wide. So the more narrow you make the top of your pants, obviously the more sizes you can get out of it. And this is only a 2T in width because my daughter's pretty narrow. So you can't make sleeve pants for too big of kids, but you definitely can when you have infants or toddlers around. So I'm going to use the original cuff of the sweater for the bottom of my pants. And I'm going to add a knit waistband to these as well, just because I don't want to fold over the sweater to put the elastic in. I think that seems too bulky. So we're keeping the fold here, and then we're just going to shape a little bit of that. Now, when working with sweaters, obviously it can start to unravel. So you just want to not work with it too much. So once I get it cut out, I just want to set it aside until it's time to sew, because the more you play with it and the more you work with it, the more chance there is, obviously, that things might start to unravel or fray. So just something to keep in mind. You don't want to like be messing with it a whole lot because you don't want it to fray. So, okay, so one option is to take these in here and make it more fitted. Another option is, which I think I'm going to do just to have less cutting and less chance for it to fray, is just to leave this a wide leg. And then I'm just going to cut out this part and the top. And so then the leg will just be a little bit more full on the bottom of the pants. So yes, this would be perfect for using if you have great thrift stores by you. Buy the biggest sweaters you can find, or t-shirts. I mean, the same principle applies to t-shirts. Get the biggest ones you can find, and then cut them up and make kids' clothes out of them. So this is going to be one pant leg. All right, so you can see that's the sleeve. And I've just pretty much used the entire sleeve for that. And then we're going to come over here and do the same thing on the other side. And you can use any legging or mesh pants. The important part that you need is the rise here and then across the top, because that's all I've cut, right? I've just cut this and this. The rest of this is going to be the original sleeve, all right? So they are going to kind of be a thicker sweatpant, but I think they'll work well. So I'm trying out my camera angles. I'm just never sure exactly how I want it to be, but I just want to make sure you can see what I'm doing. So that's why I keep playing around with where the camera is. So, all right, so I'm also going to cut a knit waistband to go with this, but maybe I will sew, sorry, I just dropped a pattern piece down here. Maybe I'm going to sew these together first, and then I'll cut the waistband, because then I'll know how wide to cut it. So we'll put that away for now. And what we want to sew is we want to sew the curved part of these pants with right sides together. So I'm going to take one pant leg, and I'm going to turn it inside out. Again, I'm being careful with the part that I cut because we don't want it to start fraying. If you don't have a serger or an overlocker, they're actually the best to use with this because obviously it binds the seam, and so it helps it not fray. If you don't have a serger or an overlocker, you can definitely do this, but you would want to stitch your seam, and then you would also want to you'd want to fully stitch your seam, and then you would want to finish with a zigzag or another stitch on your machine that's going to really bind all the fibers together. So that's just what you're kind of going for, is you want to make sure that you're really getting those seams fully put together so that it won't continue to unravel. All right, so now we're going to put right sides together by putting this sleeve, which is right side out, inside this sleeve, which is wrong side out. So pull that inside each other, and then we're going to match the original underarm sleeve together. So that will be the midpoint of the rise of the pants, or the inseam, and then we're going to just pin along here. So again, just make sure you've got the right sides together, and the two pants together, okay? Two legs together, right sides, and we're just going to zip around it with the serger, and then all we'll have to do is add the waistband. So we should be able to pull one leg out of the other. And you can see I've got some super cute sweater pants going here. All right. So these are adorable. I love them already, and I haven't even finished. All right, so let's put some an elastic waist on here. And I'm going to grab some 1-inch elastic, and I'm going to grab some cute just scrap fabric that I have. And right, because we want to make a waistband that fits on the top of these pants. So we're going to lay this here, fold it over. Looks like it's just about the width of my fabric, so that's convenient. So I'm just going to cut, let's see, I have 1 inch elastic. So with seam allowances, I want to cut my thing about 2.5. If I use a really narrow seam allowance, I can cut my fabric about 2.5 inches wide. Tall, and then go from there. So we're just, again, I'm not using the rotary cutter because it's over on the other table and I don't want to be moving back and forth. But did you see those laser scissors I just shared on my Facebook page? They would be perfect for this. So they have like a laser shooting out of them, a laser beam, and it doesn't cut the fabric, but the laser you can use to like get a straight line guide so that you can, know where you're aiming. So I think that looks super handy. Fold over this casing and we're gonna sew it right to the top of the pants, and then we're gonna thread some elastic through it, and the pants are finished. So so there's my waistband. I'm gonna sew the right sides of the small ends together, just like you would on a waistband. Okay, and then we're gonna fold it with the right side out, okay, like this. Oh, there's not a front or a back to my pants. They're the same on both sides. So you can just choose at this point which way you want to be your back and then line up the hem with the back part. So I think I didn't cut my waistband quite wide enough to use 1 inch elastic, so I'm going to again, I would recommend use your rotary cutter and measure. I'm just trying not to move around so much. Okay, so we're going to switch to 3/4 inch elastic, and then we'll have room to thread it through. So now we're going to just pin the waistband around the top of the pants, and it should be about the same size because that's what we're going for. If it's not, both the waistband and the pants are stretchy, so you can easily just stretch to make it fit. The whole thing is going to be gathered by the elastic anyway, so it doesn't really matter which one. We're going to finish pinning the waistband on. And then I'm just going to sew it around. Now when you put a waistband on, you want to make sure that you leave an opening to thread the elastic through. Okay, so that's what we'll do. And you could use as thin or as wide of elastic there. So make sure that I leave an opening to thread the elastic, and then I'll also probably throw one of my tags on there as well. So we'll grab that. So I have these magnetic things from IKEA, and it's a great place. I use that to store my tags, and then my kids know. So cute. All right. So I just want to make sure we've attached this waistband all the way around. I don't want my sweater pants unraveling. That could be awkward. And we're going to put the elastic through the hole that we left. All right, so when you come back around to your hole, you just want to make sure that you haven't twisted the elastic as you've threaded it through, and so that when you sew it together, you don't have a roll in it, okay? So I'm going to attach the elastic together and then pull it inside the casing. These are turning out so, so cute. Look at how easy, and little cuffs on the bottom. So perfect. Okay. So now we're going to close the hole that we left, but I'm going to put my tag in there so that my husband and my kids know which is the back and which is the front. Just going to pin the tag in there so we can catch it in when we're sewing. All right, so adjust the elastic around. And there we go. We have a super cute pair of sweater pants. And with a tag in the back so they know it's the back. So anyway, we will get Rose to come model those in a few minutes. But before that, let's make something else. All right, so next up is a sweater for my son. Well, actually, let's finish using this gray sweater, okay? So we're going to make Rose a sleeveless sweater dress. So you would wear it over, you'd wear it over a shirt, okay? So it just kind of a sort of, and this is my free tunic pattern. And so I'm going to use this to make the shirt. So what you want to do, and you can cut both the front and back at the same time when you're doing this. We will. So again, we're going to retain the original binding hem of the sweater. And I'm going to cut a front and a back on the fold. And then... Mommy, I want more Franklin. You want to watch more Franklin? Well, I can't put Franklin on while I'm doing this. But will you try these pants on? No, you can leave your slippers on. Yeah.
My favorite tiny.
Tiny slippers?
Yes.
Okay, stand up. We're just putting these on over her leggings. Oh boy. Stand up. Can you stand up? And not grab all that? Okay, here. Stand. Okay. Hey. Super, super cute, right? So, honey. Anyway, there are the new pants. She just got new ballet. Please don't play with that stuff. New ballet shoes yesterday. So these almost look like they could be ballet warm-up pants with the thing. So, all right, turn around, all the way around. There we go. Anyway, those turned out. Do you like your new pants? Yeah, just stand up.
My big belly.
Your big belly. You don't have a big belly. All right, let's take those off.
My big belly.
And then Mommy's going to make you like a little dress that you can try on in a minute too, okay?
My big belly.
You don't have a big belly.
Yeah.
And we need to cut this on the fold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the one half, and then I'm just going to flip the pattern over and cut the other side. And then we will cut the front neckline lower. So if you're doing this, you have a couple of options to finish we don't need to finish the bottom because it's going to be already finished. But we do need to finish the arm and the neck openings. So my plan is to again use that flowered knit and just create a thin binding on there. So like I would on a t-shirt or a tank top or something. So that's what we're going to try to do. So I'm just using the tunic pattern that's on my site for the outline of this sweater tunic. We're not going to put sleeves on it. My plan is to make it sleeveless. Okay, so now what we need to do is take the pins out and flip it over and cut the other side. Okay, so just like we would cut it on a fold, we're going to turn that over and then pin it again and cut the reversed side.
Mommy,
Yeah.
I have it.
You can have that, yes. So now we can get rid of that sweater bits. We've used most of the sweater up. And what we do want to do is cut a lower neckline on the front of this sweater. So I'm going to fold one piece in half and then put this back on top. And then we're going to cut the neckline lower on the front. Okay, so you can see I've traced it on my pattern. We're just going to cut that out. All right, so now we have two pattern pieces. One with a lower neckline and then the back with a higher neckline. Okay, and we're going to add thin binding on the armholes and on the neckline to make sure that it doesn't unravel, and we're using the original hem on the bottom of the dress. Okay, so it's just going to be a cute little, hopefully a cute little sweater vest. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to sew one of the shoulder seams together, and then we'll cut some binding. So now we have a neckline that we can sew a binding on. So we're going to grab this fabric, and I'm going to cut a narrow, like 1.5 inch neck binding. Okay, sorry, guess you can't see that. So we'll cut a narrow binding, and then we'll pin and sew it on. All right, so when you have your binding, you want to put the wrong sides together, and we're going to start at one shoulder, and I'm going to stretch and sew, or stretch and pin. I want the binding to pull the neckline together, so I don't want to pin it exactly the same size. I want to pull the binding so then it will pull the neckline together. And the wider you make your binding, the wider your neck ribbing will be. So it's up to you if you want to. Some people prefer a wider neck. Some people, prefer a narrower. So it's definitely personal preference, and you can kind of look at shirts you like and see how wide is the neck binding on that. The shirt that I'm wearing now, I made, and you can see it's a pretty narrow neckband on this one. Okay, so you can also measure your neckline, and I know I've said this before, and then cut your neckband 80 to 90% of the length. So that's a really good ratio to use depending on how stretchy your fabric is and how your net ribbing will be. So all right, so we're going to sew this around the neck. Okay, so there's our neckband, right, around there. And you could top stitch around to help it lay, and I might do that, but I'm not going to do it right now just for the sake of time, and I don't have my other machine out at the moment. So I would top stitch probably with the double needle on the other one. But let's just look and see. We can still finish this project and not do that part. So that's what we'll do. We're not going to do the top stitching, but you'll still be able to see what it looks like. So, all right, so now we need to do the same thing with the armholes. All right, so we need to bind the armholes. So I'm going to cut 2 more pieces of fabric for binding. Okay, make them the same width. And if you're just using regular cotton knit fabric for binding, you want to make sure that it's one that's really pretty stretchy and also has a good recovery, which means it comes back to itself really well and doesn't keep unraveling. So a cotton lycra like this or something that has a really good stretch makes a great knit binding, and I often use that around my necklines and use it around necklines and all my knit t-shirts. So all right, so we have one armhole here, the one that we sewed the shoulder already. We're going to pin around this side, and then we'll sew the other shoulder seam and come back and do the other side. So again, I'm putting my binding with the wrong sides together, so the right sides are out. And then stretching a little bit as I pull it, so as I pin it. Okay, so there is one of the sleeves, or the arms. We're going to sew the other shoulder seam together then with the right sides together. We'll also be then enclosing the neckline, the neckband. So now we have the neckline finished, and then we're going to put a band on this other sleeve that we already cut. So again, we're taking the ribbing So there's the other arm. Oops, I did not, you can see here, I missed part of the sweater. So we're going to go back and attach that. Do not want any holes in this. All right, so there we go. Okay, just going to be a little sweater dress, just a little extra warmth. So to sew the side seams, I'm just going to start at the arms, match the binding, and go down. One side, let's sew up the other side. The seam does look like it's getting a little bit stretched out. See, you can see that, but a good wash and that should help that recover. So anyway, there is a little sweater tunic. I need to also work in the ends of my serger, but I'll do that later too. So, all right, so when Rose comes back, we will have her try on this little number. Love when we do that. And I'm going to start by cutting the sleeves, and I'm going to retain the original cuff. There's my sleeve pattern. So for this one, I'm just using my boys classic t-shirt pattern, and so we're keeping the same cuff of the sweater. So I'm just going to pin this on the fold, And then we're just going to use the sleeves to cut new sleeves. Okay, so you can grab the free pattern and you can use it to just cut it out of a t-shirt or the sweater. So I'm adding a little bit of length because my son has kind of ape arms. And this is a nice thin sweater with a much tighter, it's not going to fray near as much, okay? It's a much tighter knit. The machine that made this was a much smaller knit machine. And overall the sweater is a much lighter sweater. So it will be easier to work with. So if you're doing this for the first time, I would definitely suggest trying to find a tight knit, just because it will make it easier to not worry about the fraying. So there's 2 sleeves. Okay, we don't have to hem them because we've kept the original cuff. Stacy, I know I've been thinking about what I could make for a recipe. So I will do another recipe one sometime. For me, it's just a little easier to do the sewing shows because that's what I do spend more time. But I do share a recipe every week, so it's not like I don't do the recipes. All right, now usually I would want to retain the bottom hem of this sweater. However, I also want to keep this design, and because my son is shorter, I can't get this design and keep the original hem. So I'm going to put a new binding on the bottom and not keep the hem in exchange for getting to use this pattern at the top for the top of my sweater. So I'm going to move it up. So instead of lining it up with the bottom, I'm going to move it up and have this pattern be going across the chest of my sweater. All right, so that's just the choice I'm making. And I'm going to put a new binding on the bottom, which means I'm going to take off about 2 inches of the bottom, and I'll put a binding cuff on there. So, Stacy, if you are on my blog and you see one of the recipes that you'd love for me to share or cook for you, let me know. I'm open to suggestions as something that I've already done on there that I could make for you guys live. I would be happy to do that. Actually, let's see. I want to make sure I'm going to line that up with the center of one of those triangles. So I'm going to cut the lower front neckline. And now we have a sweater ready to be put together. All right, but I need to make a bottom band because we cut off and we did not use the original, we did not keep the original band for the sweater. So I'm using this fun yellow binding that I have. And we're just going to cut a band, and then we also need to cut a neck band. We don't need cuffs for the sleeves, as I did already. Let's see, how wide do we need this? Not quite that wide. Sometimes you want to make your bottom binding a little bit smaller than your sweater because that will, pull it in and keep it tight. If you make it the same size, you're not really going to get any sort of fit on the bottom. It will just hang. So if you make your bottom band a little bit smaller than your sweater, so we'll fold it over, that'll be the bottom band. And then let's cut a neck band while we're cutting. And again, that one we're going to make much thinner. All right, now we can get these out of the way. So we have a neckband cut and we have a bottom band cut for the sweater, and we're just going to assemble it like we would a normal shirt. So with right sides together, let me double check that I am putting the right sides together. We're going to sew the shoulder seams. And I'm going to show you, I often put my neckbands in on a flat, but I'm going to put the neckband in on this one in the round. So I'll just give you those two different techniques to use to put the neckband in. So instead of just sewing one shoulder seam, we're going to sew both shoulder seams before we do the neckband. So there's one, and there's two. And then what we want to do is we want to measure around the neck, 17. So 10% off would be about 1.7 inch off. So instead of 17, we're going to cut it just over 15 inches. And then we'll stretch that on. So my very estimate math. All right, so I'm going to cut my binding just over 15 inches. Could you use the jumper to make a neckband? You could, yes. You could take the original sweater and use it. I just am afraid about having two sweater parts together, about just the more options of fraying. But you could even cut the original neckband off the sweater and reuse that. I do that with t-shirts. With t-shirts, I do that all the time. So this part, the narrow part of the neckband, I just sewed together, and I'm going to put that in the back of the sweater. And then we're going to stretch and sew around. So I want to find the other half of this, and then we're going to pin that in the front center, which hopefully is the top of that gray diamond. Okay, and then we're going to stretch it and pin it around. So I think it is a little bit easier if you're just starting out to do the neckband on the flat and not in the round like this. But I think there's an argument that this does look slightly nicer than having a side seam on your neckband. However, when I look at most of my clothes that I've purchased in the store, ready to wear clothes, they definitely sewed their neckbands on the flat and then sewed up the other shoulder seam later. So take a look at, it's always interesting once you start sewing to take a look at how your clothes that you bought are constructed and see how you're doing them. All right, so we're going to sew around, and I'm going to be okay, and so there's the neckband on the sweater. Okay, so cute. Again, I might top stitch this later, but I'm not going to now. But you do need to make sure with the sweater that, look at me, I am doing a terrible job. See how I missed that little bit? Well, that will just fray right open if I don't catch that. I guess I'm glad I'm seeing it now rather than later after it has frayed a hole. Okay, so now we want to put the sleeves on. So I'm going to open up the side of the sweater here where the shoulder seam is sewed at the top, and then we're going to match the center of the sleeve with the shoulder seam, and then we're going to pin down both sides. Okay, and we're just going to ease that sleeve into the opening. And then we don't have to do anything with the bottom of the sleeve because we kept the original cuff of the sweater. But we will have to, when we're done, after we sew the side seams, we're going to put the bottom band on. Normally I would always keep the bottom of the sweater because it has such a nice cuff already, but I wanted to keep the design of the sweater, so I guess I couldn't have both. All right, so there's one sleeve, and then we'll pin the other one in, and then I anyway, we are coming along with the sweater, and now we need to sew the side seams. So I'm going to put the wrong sides together, or I'm sorry, the right sides together, and I'm going to sew from the cuff of one sleeve down the sleeve and then to the bottom of the sweater. Some of these, so if you have a serger tail like this, you can't just cut it because it will fray. So I like to take a large darning needle, and I will stick the needle back through my seam a little bit, and then I thread the tail through the eye. It's really quiet out there. I wonder what Rose is into. So last week I said that. I said, I wonder what Rose is into. It's been really quiet. And she was in my makeup and had totally covered her face with like foundation, and it was not good. So anyway, so bring the tail back through some of your stitches, and then you can go ahead and clip this, and it's much less likely to fray. You could also just put a couple drops of fray stitch on that seam, and that will really help it. So obviously if you're using a regular machine, you're just going to go back and forth, and you won't have the tail or the option or the problem with it maybe unraveling. So that's just if you're using for serger tails. That's what I like to do. So I'll go back on all these things that I've made and thread in the tail. All right, so let's put on, I know the colors are a little bit bright on this, but hopefully it'll be good in the end. So I think because it has the orange on it that we can get away with the yellow. We're going to do the band. So I'm going to take the band and I'm going to sew the two short ends together. Okay, and then I'm going to, what do you have? Did you peel an orange? Oh, that's a good thing to do. So with the right, oh what? Cheese? What do you have? Let me see. Is that cheese? You just, how did you get it? You cut it. Oh, wow. That's not what I wanted to hear. You need Mommy's help to cut the cheese. Okay. Find the other half, and we're going to pin that across on the other side seam. And then we're going to stretch the band a little bit to fit across the bottom of the sweater. Sew it all up. So the last thing to finish this sweater is just to sew around the bottom of this band, and then it will be all finished. So I'm just going to zip around the bottom of this sweater band. Let's check out the finished. So, all right, there we go. There is this is a size 8 sweater cut down from a men's sweater, and looks like it's going to be pretty cute sweater. So I'll have to put it on my son, and then I'll take a picture and show you guys later. But on here. Okay, stand up. No, stand. Okay, so there's just a little quick sweater tunic. You can see it needs, a few finishing touches with some top stitching, but in the end is a very basic way to make a warm garment for Rose out of, here, stand up. A warm garment for her that she can wear. Don't be washing that, putting that pin around. And just to stay warm, you could make it more fitted. I just was kind of going for a very loose thing. So success today with one sweater dress, one pair of super cute sweater pants, and then a third garment with just a classic sweater made from an adult sweater. So thank you so much for joining me. I had a fun time, and I'm really happy that all three things turned out that I attempted today, and I will be photographing them, and then I'll be doing a blog post where I'll put more information and the patterns that I used, and all of the information that you need to recreate this. So thank you so much for joining me. I'd love for you to like my Facebook page, join my pattern group if you don't already, and then we can stay connected, and you